The event was filled with influential people, all immersed in the lights and luxury surrounding the launch of the brand's new collection. Audrey felt like a shadow among them, observing from a distance, wishing to be the center of attention but not knowing how to make it happen. She knew she needed more than just beauty and being present; those alone wouldn't change her life. But she had no idea where to begin. That was when she saw Ethan Sterling. He wasn't dazzled by the event. In fact, he seemed distant, as if observing everything from a place where no one could reach him. And without intending to, Audrey saw him too. He was watching her from afar, as if waiting for something. It was a strange feeling, but at the same time, familiar, like he could sense her insecurities and quiet ambitions. She decided to approach him. After all, why not? Maybe this was the only opportunity she'd get to stand out in an environment where everyone was only concerned with their appearances. With a friendly smile, Audrey walked over and, as she stood next to him, casually asked, "Isn't this event a little boring?" she said, her tone laid back, while observing the people around them. Ethan turned to her, surprised by her direct approach, but the curiosity in his eyes was evident. "You know, you're right," he replied, smiling. "Everything here feels a bit mechanical, doesn't it? But I guess that's just how life is, full of events trying to sell themselves as something grand. What do you think? Are you having fun?" Audrey laughed, relieved that he was open to her initiative. "I'm trying to find myself more than have fun," she said, with a sigh. "Sometimes, I sit here and wonder if any of this actually makes sense, you know? All this glamour, the need to be seen. I feel more lost than ever." Ethan watched her with interest. He knew exactly what she meant, even though he didn't speak much about his own feelings. Something in the way she spoke touched him. It was as though she was trying to figure out who she really was, without caring about what others thought. "I think everyone here feels that way, but not everyone has the courage to admit it. And you do have the courage to admit it. I think that's rare." Audrey smiled, touched by the compliment, but soon her gaze shifted away. Something about his words made her feel like he was about to ask a more personal question. "Tell me, Audrey," he began, his look trying to read her, "what do you want from life? Besides this modeling job, of course." She took a deep breath, contemplating. She wasn't sure if she should open up to someone so distant from her reality. But at the same time, there was something comforting and safe in the way he looked at her. She hesitated before speaking. "I don't have family. My mom passed away a few years ago, and my dad died when I was still a kid. I was raised alone. It's not easy to talk about, but I think you deserve to know." Ethan fell silent for a moment, as if processing her words. The respect in his eyes was palpable, and that made Audrey feel an instant connection. "You're incredible, you know," he said, lightly touching her hand on the table. His touch was gentle but enough to send a small shock of emotion through her. "Not because you overcame all this, but because you didn't let pain define you. That's rare." The silence between them grew comfortable, and the air seemed thick with unspoken understanding and the budding connection between them. Ethan then leaned slightly forward. "I'd really like to get to know you more, Audrey. I don't want to rush things, but may I make you an offer? We could meet again, maybe in a quieter place?" She looked at him, her heart racing, but something inside her made her hesitate. "I'd like that too, Ethan, but I don't want things to move too fast. It's not the right time for something rushed." He smiled, understanding. "All right, I respect that. Let's take as much time as we need. How about we exchange contacts? That way, we can set something up when you're ready." Audrey nodded, smiling softly as she took his phone and typed her number in. "Sure. I'd love to continue this conversation," she said before standing up with him. Ethan walked her to the door, where he kissed her on the cheek, a little longer than expected, but not forced. A sweet kiss, like a promise of something yet to be explored. "Let me give you a ride home," he suggested, offering a lift. Audrey thought for a moment before pointing to an imposing building ahead. "It's just across the street. That's where I'm staying now. The ride will have to wait for next time, Ethan." He glanced at the building with a look of approval. See you soon, Audrey. We'll talk soon, he said, getting into the car and driving away. Audrey watched the car disappear around the corner before entering the building, a place that, in some way, made her feel closer to her dreams. But inside, it wasn't her home, it was an apartment rented by the company that had hired her. In the hallway, a few models she worked with were talking, and she joined them for a few minutes. They chatted about upcoming shows, upcoming jobs, but something in Audrey felt unsettled. The feeling that her life was about to change was too strong to ignore. After a while, she decided to leave the building. The journey to her real home was long, by bus, all the way to a neighborhood far from the city. By the time she arrived, the night had fallen, and when she opened the door to the small, old, humble house, her mother was sitting at the table, as always, waiting. "Audrey, you're late today. Where have you been?" her mother asked, with a tone of reproach but also a visible concern in her eyes. Audrey sighed, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. She was tired, but there was also a push inside her to get away from the comfort of her family. "I was working, Mom." "It's none of your business." Her mother looked at her with a sad expression. "You always say that, daughter. Always pulling away. Can't you see what this modeling life is doing to you?" "I'm just worried." "I don't need protection, Mom. I just need you to understand me," Audrey replied, the anger and pain spilling over in her words. The silence that followed was painful. Audrey knew she was lying to herself, but she didn't know how to go back. She entered her room, and as she closed the door, she realized the emptiness growing inside her. She wanted to be more, but what was she willing to lose for that? The afternoon was quiet, the sound of distant traffic drifting softly through the open window. Sophia was in the kitchen, organizing some utensils when Audrey entered the living room with a determined look, making her mother stop immediately. Something was about to happen. "Mom, I need to tell you something," Audrey said, her voice low but firm, leaving no room for doubt. Sophia looked at her, feeling the weight of her words, as if her daughter were about to say something important. She dried her hands on the dish towel and moved closer, not knowing what to expect. "What is it, sweetheart? What's going on?" Sophia asked, trying to hide the concern in her voice. Audrey took a deep breath before continuing, her eyes locked on her mother's but with an expression hard to read. I rented an apartment. Downtown. With the money I got from work." She paused, letting the words settle. Sophia froze, as if the ground had disappeared beneath her. She let the dish towel drop, and silence filled the room for a long moment. Finally, she looked at Audrey, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. "What? You rented an apartment? But, sweetheart, why didn't you tell me before? We need you here. I need you." Sophia almost shouted, not knowing what to think or what to do. Audrey avoided making direct eye contact with her mother, anguish filling her chest. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but she felt like she had to make this decision. "Mom, I can't take living like this anymore. I can't stand this life, this poverty. I can't keep going on like this. I need to leave, do something for myself, find a better life. I can't live here, with us squeezing by, always just trying to survive. I don't want this for myself. I don't want to be that person who just lives off scraps." Sophia fell silent, her eyes filling with tears. She didn't know how to handle this. It felt like she was losing her daughter, but at the same time, she knew Audrey needed this, that it was something coming from deep within her. However, the pain of seeing her leave, of seeing her wanting to leave everything behind, made her heart tighten. "But sweetheart, you're leaving me all alone." Sophia's voice trembled, and tears began to fall from her eyes, uncontrollable. I raised you to have a better future, but I never imagined it would happen this way, so quickly. You're going to leave me behind? I can't lose you, Audrey. I just can't." Audrey, also with tears in her eyes, moved closer to her mother and hugged her, but she felt the weight of her decision in her chest. She knew her mother was suffering, but she also knew she couldn't continue living in the same cycle, in the same reality. She needed to try something new, she needed to get out of it. "Mom, it's not that I want to leave you. I just need to find my own way. I need to try. I have to try, for me, for my future." As Audrey walked out the door, Sophia stood there, watching her daughter leave, with a broken heart but holding on to the hope that one day, she would find the happiness she was searching for. The city center had never seemed so far away to Audrey. The lights of the buildings reflected a life she was starting to long for deeply, but one that seemed more and more distant from her roots. She decided to spend the money she received from her job on renting a small apartment downtown, which became her new refuge. The apartment was simple, nothing compared to the luxurious places she was starting to frequent, but it was an attempt to create a space that fit the story she was building for Ethan. She didn't want to be just another model. She wanted to be a classy, elegant woman who fit into the world he lived in, where her humble origins couldn't be exposed. Audrey knew time was passing quickly. Every moment with Ethan felt like a gift, but also a lie. She made him believe her life was perfect, that the pain of losing her mother didn't affect her anymore. But every time she spoke about her family, the story became more elaborate, more distant from the truth. Sophia, her mother, kept calling incessantly. It was always the same tone of worry, as if she knew something was wrong, that Audrey was drifting away from her. But Audrey couldn't answer. Not now. Not with the lie she was building. She didn't know how long she could keep up the charade, but for now, the lie seemed to work. Her mother's phone calls kept coming, but Audrey never answered. She felt a knot in her throat every time the caller ID showed Sophia, but she ignored it. What would she say? What could she explain? Her mother wouldn't understand that, for her, Ethan's world was completely different from the life they had built together, in the humble comfort of a simple home. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed more and more enchanted by her. Their relationship was getting serious, and although Audrey knew she was playing a dangerous game, she couldn't resist the feeling of finally belonging to the world of the rich and powerful. She loved the fancy dinners, the car rides through upscale neighborhoods, and the parties where she was treated like a real princess. He treated her with a gentleness she had never experienced, and deep down, she knew he believed everything she said. It was a dangerous game, but one she was willing to play. Every time they went out together, she felt more alive, closer to making all her dreams come true. Ethan surrounded her with his world, taking her to places where people admired her, complimenting her on her beauty and grace. She was becoming, in the eyes of everyone, someone who truly mattered. Time passed, and Audrey began living two lives, one with Ethan, where she was the sophisticated woman enchanted by everything around her, and another, darker life, where the truth hid in her heart, threatening to surface every day. She began to distance herself more and more from her mother. The phone calls with Sophia became rare, even non-existent. Audrey dodged conversations, made excuses, and eventually, Sophia stopped insisting. Maybe it was fear, the feeling that she was losing her daughter to something she couldn't understand. Her mother's phone never rang as much again, and Audrey tried to ignore the emptiness beginning to take hold of her. It wasn't just the lie that consumed her, but also the distance from someone who had been everything to her. Sophia never knew the lie, but Audrey felt the guilt tightening her chest with each new day. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed more and more determined. He started talking about the future, about how things were going well for them, about how she was the woman he wanted to build a life with. Audrey, though she felt more and more uncomfortable, didn't know how to stop the flow of words and promises of a bright future. It was a love she couldn't control. She tried to maintain some distance, but the intensity of the relationship enveloped her so completely that she could no longer tell where the lie ended and reality began. Deep down, she knew her life with Ethan was made of expectations and dreams, but also masks and secrets. One night, after another elegant dinner at a luxury restaurant, Ethan drove her to his car. The atmosphere was light, the mood romantic. Soft music played in the background, and the smell of his perfume seemed to wrap around her like a cloud of seduction. He looked at her with a smile that made her feel a mix of affection and a hint of insecurity. "Audrey," he said, with a softness in his voice that sent a shiver down her spine, "I've been thinking a lot about our future. You've been everything I've ever dreamed of. And I want you to know that I don't see anything standing in the way of us spending the rest of our lives together." Audrey felt her heart race. She knew what he was about to say, but at the same time, she didn't want those words to leave his mouth. She didn't know if she was ready for this. But as she looked at him, all she felt was overwhelming emotion. Ethan leaned in, took her hand, and looked into her eyes with a sparkle Audrey had never imagined seeing in someone. "I love you, Audrey. I want you to be mine forever. Let's do this together. Will you marry me?" The proposal came like a shock, as if the weight of the lie she had built was about to crumble right then and there. But at the same time, there was a sense of pleasure, of joy, because she knew that, despite everything, he truly loved her. Audrey hesitated for a moment. What would she say? She didn't know what to do with all of this. But deep down, the promise of a life beside Ethan made her want to say yes. She took a deep breath, and with a shy smile, she replied, I love you too, Ethan. I accept, my love." Ethan kissed her passionately, and in that moment, Audrey knew that, somehow, she was giving herself over. But she also knew that the lie she had built could be the price she would pay for everything she was gaining. She just didn't realize how high that price would be. Audrey was in a world that felt unreal. Each day, she felt more distant from the life she had always known, and at the same time, more integrated into the luxury and ostentation that had seemed reserved for others until now. The changes in her life were happening so quickly that she could hardly process everything that was going on. Ethan took her to the most exclusive places in the city, and she was starting to feel comfortable in this new environment, surrounded by people who saw her as the woman of the future, a true lady in the world of the rich and powerful. The love she felt for Ethan was enveloping her more and more, but the guilt also grew within her, like a shadow that never let her be at peace. She knew her life was being built on a lie, but she allowed herself to live this fairy tale, without questioning the costs. They were about to get married, and the next step was choosing the house where they would live. The mansion they had found was in an upscale neighborhood of the city, impressive, with a garden that looked like something out of a movie. It was the kind of place where people seemed to have it all, and Audrey knew that this would be the new chapter of her life. The house needed some renovations, but once everything was ready, it would be the dream home of anyone. The house where she and Ethan would live, far away from everything she had left behind. While Ethan was thrilled with the idea of building the perfect house for the two of them, Audrey tried to convince herself that this was the right place for her. Every new step took her further from her past, and with that, she felt more lost. Sometimes, she wondered if what she was doing was the right thing, but she always reminded herself that she would never have a life like this if she hadn't taken that first step, that first mistake of distancing herself from her mother, of hiding who she really was. Sophia, her mother, knew something was wrong, but she didn't have the courage to ask directly. The truth, for her, came through a gossip on the internet. A celebrity website posted a note about Audrey's wedding day with Ethan, showing photos of them together at a recent event, accompanied by statements about their upcoming union. Sophia was devastated to see her daughter involved in a world so far from her own, and more than that, to see how little she knew about her daughter's life, to the point of not even being invited to the wedding. With a heavy heart, Sophia didn't think twice before calling Audrey. She needed to know what was going on, needed to hear from her daughter what was happening in her life. The call took a while to be answered, but when it finally was, Audrey's voice on the other end of the line sounded cold and distant, as if she were trying to hide something. "Hey, Mom." Audrey answered, but her voice lacked the familiarity it once had. It was a simple hey, as if it were just another person calling. Sophia took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that were about to fall. The longing for her daughter squeezed her chest like unbearable pain. "Audrey, I saw it on the internet, about you and Ethan. Is everything okay? Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to know, sweetheart. I miss you. Please tell me what's going on." Audrey's response came immediately, her words laced with coldness and disdain. "I don't have time for this, Mom. Don't contact me anymore. I'm not the same anymore. You need to understand that." Sophia fell silent. What she had just heard felt like a punch to the stomach. She could barely believe that her daughter was speaking to her like that, pushing her away so brutally. "Audrey, Sophia tried to continue, but her daughter interrupted her once again, more cutting than before. "Enough, Mom. I've said what I needed to say. Don't reach out to me anymore. I don't want to be the Audrey you knew anymore. I'm someone else now, and you need to understand that." Audrey's words were like a sharp blade, cutting through any remaining bond of affection. Sophia remained silent, staring at the phone, trying to understand what had just happened. She felt a deep pain in her chest, a sense of loss that seemed to suffocate her. How could her daughter be so cruel? How could she say that with such indifference? "Audrey, please," Sophia tried one more time, but Audrey had already hung up. The phone went silent, and the room around Sophia seemed to become a cold, empty place. She sat down on the couch, tears rolling down her face. She felt helpless, as if she were losing her daughter to a world she couldn't understand. On the other end, Audrey held the phone in her hand, her heart pounding unevenly. She knew she had just said words she never imagined saying, but at the same time, she felt a sense of liberation. She had made her choice, and she knew she couldn't go back. The engagement with Ethan, the glamorous life, the luxurious house, all of it was her new reality. Her mother, the woman who had raised her with so much love, now seemed distant from everything she was building. Audrey took a deep breath and walked over to the window of the apartment where she lived, watching the city outside. What she was leaving behind was much bigger than she had imagined. But in that moment, she no longer knew how to reconcile with her old life. The pain she felt was smothered by the excitement of a future full of promises and wealth. The phone rang again, but this time, it was Ethan, with his gentle and loving voice. "Hey, my love. How are you?" Audrey took a deep breath, trying to push away the conflicting emotions that consumed her. She smiled, though the smile was forced, and answered with the same coldness as before. "I'm fine. Everything is going perfectly. Don't worry." But inside, she knew something was broken. Something inside her was falling apart, and the lie she carried seemed heavier with each passing day. The distance between Audrey and Sophia was growing, and with it, the silent pain of a broken heart that she refused to face. She had everything she had always wanted, but the price was higher than she ever imagined. The morning of the day before the wedding was everything Audrey had always dreamed of. She woke up with her heart racing, feeling the weight of the responsibility of a new beginning, but also the anticipation of a promising future beside Ethan. The mansion they had chosen to live in was almost ready, the ceremony was set, and everything seemed perfect. She felt on top of the world, as if nothing could interrupt the path she was walking. Ethan was excited too. He called her early in the morning, his voice filled with a smile, telling her he couldn't wait to see her dressed as a bride. The conversation was brief but full of promises and affection, like a prelude to something grand. They had planned everything so carefully, each detail of the wedding would be like a fairy tale, and the future seemed brighter with each passing day. But fate, as always, has a cruel way of interrupting even the most perfect plans. At 3:30 p.m., after a day of intense preparation for the ceremony, Ethan and Audrey boarded the helicopter that would take them to the party venue, in an exclusive and remote area, ideal for a large event. The sky was clear, with not a cloud in sight. Everything seemed in order, as if the universe itself were conspiring for the big event. As the helicopter sliced through the blue sky, Audrey gazed at the landscape with a soft smile on her lips. She was so wrapped up in the preparations, in the emotion of the moment, that she didn't notice the imminent danger. The pilot, an experienced man, was at the helm, and Ethan sat next to him, chatting excitedly about the future. It was a moment of happiness, where the only thing that seemed to matter was the now. But the now, like all things fleeting, came to an end. The helicopter suddenly jolted. A loud bang. The engine sputtered. The wind, which had been gentle, became merciless. Audrey tried to hold on, but the feeling of falling was inevitable. She felt the void, panic taking over her, but before she could scream, everything went black. The impact was devastating. The helicopter plunged into the forest with force, its fuselage twisted, and the sound of metal against metal echoed through the air. The pilot didn't stand a chance. He died instantly, a victim of the impact with a tree. Ethan, although severely injured, managed to survive. Broken legs, an arm, and a spinal injury, but he was alive. He tried to get up, dragging himself, calling for Audrey, but despair overtook him when he couldn't find her. That's when he knew the tragedy was much worse than he could have ever imagined. Audrey was there, motionless, unconscious. The fall had been so violent that she had lost consciousness. The tragedy was the first thing the world knew the following morning. The news was broadcast on every station, and Ethan's name was associated with a tragedy so great it seemed surreal. Helicopter crashes in remote area, pilot dead and couple seriously injured, the headlines screamed. Ethan's family was the first to arrive at the hospital. His parents, visibly shaken, were there, waiting for news about their son. But the news was scarce and painful. Ethan was being treated, but Audrey was in a coma. The trauma to her spine left her tetraplegic, with irreversible damage to her spinal cord. Sophia, Audrey's mother, learned of the tragedy through a phone call. The pain of knowing her daughter was gravely injured hit her like a bomb. She didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go. She, who had been distanced from Audrey, now felt like fate had forced her to return. Guilt consumed her for not being more present, for not finding a way to connect with her daughter before all of this happened. She took the bus to the hospital, not knowing exactly what to do or what to expect. Deep down, she feared the worst. She couldn't imagine the pain Audrey was feeling, or the state she might be in. Her heart broke with each passing second, and as she sat in the bus, memories of happy moments with Audrey flooded her mind. She remembered the afternoons they spent together, the advice, the shared laughter. Everything seemed so distant now, so unrecognizable. Ethan was in the same hospital, but his condition wasn't as severe. He had been unconscious due to the shock, but he would soon wake up, unaware of the pain that awaited him. When he woke up, his mind was foggy, filled with pain and confusion. But the first thought he had was about Audrey. Where was she? He asked to see his fiancé, to know if she was okay, but the truth he found was devastating. He had learned of the pilot's death, and now Audrey's condition seemed even worse. The man who was about to marry her, the man who loved her, saw the world crumble before his eyes. No, this can't be happening, he thought, trying to comprehend the magnitude of the tragedy. He got out of bed, his body still in pain, and asked to be taken to where she was. When he reached Audrey's room, what he found was an unconscious woman, his fiancée, who no longer seemed to be the woman he had shared dreams and plans with. The shock of seeing her in that condition was so overwhelming that he couldn't hold back the tears. He knelt beside the bed, holding her hand, his heart broken. "I can't lose you, Audrey. Please, don't leave me," he whispered, his voice filled with pain. Audrey's world, the world she had built with Ethan, was now in ruins. And all that remained was the pain, the fear of what the future would hold for her. The hospital corridor was silent, interrupted only by the constant movement of doctors and nurses. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if the tragedy still hung in the air, preventing anyone from breathing freely. Sophia entered the hospital as a stranger in her daughter's life, a place where, for so long, she had been absent. Desperation had brought her back, and now, all she wanted was to be by Audrey's side, even if it was just to hold her hand and wait. When she arrived at the room, Sophia hesitated before entering. She knew her daughter's condition was serious, but seeing Audrey like this felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. When she pushed the door open, her eyes immediately locked on Audrey, lying in bed, unconscious, tubes connected to her body, her eyes closed, her face lifeless. By the bed, Ethan was sitting in a chair, his face marked by tears. He was hunched over, his hands on his face, trying to contain himself but failing. The suffering was evident in every movement. He was broken, lost, not knowing how to cope with the gravity of what had happened. Sophia entered quietly. She just stood there for a moment, watching him, feeling the growing anguish. It was as if the world was falling apart, and the weight of guilt pressed on her. She didn't know where to start. She didn't know if she should go to him or just stay there, waiting, trying to understand everything that had happened. Ethan, noticing someone had entered, looked up and saw her. His eyes were swollen, but when he saw the woman walking into the room, something in the back of his mind made him rise quickly. He wiped his face, trying to mask his sadness and confusion, but there was no hiding the emptiness in his gaze. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling but filled with curiosity. The pain he felt seemed bigger than anything else in that moment. Sophia swallowed hard before speaking, her voice faltering as she tried to stay strong. "I'm her mother, Audrey's mother," she replied, the words barely escaping in a whisper. Ethan froze for a moment. He looked at her as if searching for something that would make sense. But his reaction was quick and instinctive, and the words came out of his mouth as swiftly as his thoughts. "No, that can't be true," he said, his tone firm, almost accusatory. "Audrey told me she lost her parents, that she had no one left. She told me she was alone in the world." Sophia felt the sting of his words like a slap to the face. She had distanced herself, but she hadn't known that the lie her daughter had created to fit into that glamorous world could be revealed so abruptly, so painfully. She never imagined that the story Audrey had told Ethan would be so far from the truth. The silence in the room became unbearable. They looked at each other, confusion taking over both of them. Ethan's words were turning Sophia's mind upside down, and at the same time, she felt a deep sorrow. She knew her daughter was far away, that her life was unfolding in a direction she didn't understand, but hearing this from Ethan's mouth was like realizing the lie she had known was never meant to last. "She told you that?" Sophia asked, her voice coming out as a whisper, as if trying to comprehend what had happened between her and her daughter. Ethan, with his eyes still filled with tears, shook his head, still trying to process the situation. "Yes. She told me her parents had died and that she was alone. She told me everything. Said she had lost her mom, and I believed her, I believed it was true." He paused, letting the words linger in the air. "But this can't be real, it just can't. I don't understand anything anymore." Sophia walked closer to Audrey's bed, feeling a lump in her throat, but at the same time, something in her heart began to break. She never wanted her daughter's lie to be revealed like this, not so brutally, not in front of someone who, until then, seemed so important to her. The pain she felt was greater than the sadness of the situation itself. It was the pain of losing something that never happened. The pain of not being part of her daughter's life the way she wanted, the way it should have been. She touched Audrey's hand, and for a moment, she stood there, silently observing her, trying to feel any trace of the daughter she once knew. The young woman who always had big dreams but also carried a pain that Sophia knew she would never fully understand. Sophia swallowed her tears. "I raised her alone, Ethan. I raised her with all the love a person can give. But she pulled away from me. She never told me the truth. I didn't know she was living this lie." Ethan didn't know what to say. He watched her with an empty expression, still trying to process Sophia's words. He had fallen in love with Audrey, believing she was the strongest woman he had ever known. And now, everything seemed like an illusion, a facade. Why would she do this? Ethan finally asked, the pain in his voice more evident. "Why would she lie to me? I don't understand, everything I thought was real now feels like a lie." Sophia looked at him, trying to understand his pain too. He had fallen in love with a version of Audrey, a version that even she herself wasn't sure was true anymore. I don't know. She's always been ashamed of our financial situation. Audrey always had this side she kept hidden from everyone, even from me. She wanted more, she wanted to be more, and she thought that world of lies was the only way to get it, she responded, the sadness overflowing in her words. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, not knowing what to do with this new reality that was unfolding before him. He looked at Audrey once more, and the pain of seeing her in that condition pierced him, like a sharp blade. What could he do now? He felt like the world he had built around her was crumbling, and all that was left was a bitter doubt about everything he had believed. Audrey's lie was falling before them, and with it, the dream Ethan had envisioned for his future. What could they do with the truth now? What could they do with the love he thought was pure? Sophia was there, watching her daughter, but the chasm between her and Audrey seemed deeper than ever. And the words she had for her daughter seemed to be lost in the air, with no echo, no answer. All that remained was the pain of a truth that couldn't be undone. The most expensive hospital in the city was a fortress of glass and steel, a place where money seemed to make the difference between life and death. For Ethan, the days had turned into a thin line between hope and disillusionment. He spent his hours there, sitting by Audrey's side, every beep of the monitor echoing the rhythm of his own life slipping away. Audrey's body was there, but her mind was distant, in a place he wasn't sure he could reach. Ethan's leg fractures were starting to heal, but he couldn't care less about his recovery. The only thought occupying his mind was Audrey, the woman he was about to marry, now in a coma, unsure if she would ever wake up. He never imagined the weight of his life would fall so heavily on his shoulders, not knowing where to turn, how to handle the gravity of everything happening. Ethan's immensely wealthy family quickly took charge of Audrey's medical bills. Everything was arranged, from the best doctors to the intensive care team that would stay with her 24/7. Sophia also spent most of her days by her daughter's side. Meanwhile, Ethan felt like he was doing all he could, but part of him knew that, even with all the help he could offer, the future was still uncertain, and the cost of his own pain seemed to be becoming greater than any money could cover. But what he didn't know was that the impact of his life would also reach others, especially someone he thought was distant from his story. Natalie, Ethan's ex-girlfriend, had just returned to the city after a long period in Europe. She had moved there for work, but upon hearing about Ethan's accident and the tragedy involving Audrey, she didn't think twice before coming back. She had learned about what happened through news reports and calls from mutual friends. Natalie's first reaction was shock, but soon despair took over. She still remembered how Ethan had been a great love for her, how losing him had deeply affected her back then. She knew their relationship ended due to time and distance, but what she felt for Ethan had never completely disappeared. He had always been the man she imagined by her side, the only one capable of truly completing her. Determined to try something, Natalie went to Ethan's family mansion the morning after she arrived in the city. She knew Ethan's condition was fragile, but she didn't know how she would react seeing him so broken, so far from the man she once knew. Her heart ached when she saw him. His eyes were empty, his shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the world. Ethan saw her before she could approach, and his eyes, usually so clear and vibrant, were now marked by pain and longing. He didn't expect to see her there, and the surprise was instant. When Natalie came closer, he seemed to be in a state of shock, as if he were trying to understand what was happening in his life. "Ethan," she said softly, almost hesitantly. I heard about the accident. I couldn't stay away. I'm so sorry for everything that's happened." Ethan looked at her, his expression closed, but he didn't know how to react. He never knew how to feel about Natalie. When they broke up, he thought their chapter had closed, but now, there she was in front of him, concerned, trying to reconnect. "Natalie, I don't know if this is the best time," Ethan started, his voice hoarse with all the suffering. Natalie quickly interrupted him, stepping forward with tears in her eyes. "I know you're suffering, Ethan. I saw you suffer when we broke up, and I saw how much you loved Audrey. But I can't watch you lose yourself like this. I know everything is hard right now, but you can't blame yourself forever. And Audrey," she hesitated, taking a deep breath. "You might lose her, Ethan. And if that happens, what will be left for you?" Natalie's statement sent a chill down Ethan's spine. He felt a mix of confusion and anger, but also something he didn't want to acknowledge, a lingering care for her. He looked at her, the pain of losing Audrey overwhelming his mind. "Don't talk about that, Natalie. I don't want to think about it. Audrey, she is my life now. I can't imagine my future without her," he said, his voice breaking at the end as he looked at Audrey's bed. "I don't know what I'll do if she doesn't wake up." Natalie stepped closer to him, placing her hand on his shoulder, intending to comfort him, but he pulled away slightly, as if trying to distance himself from any support that wasn't from Audrey. The space between them felt not just physical, it was emotional and deep. Ethan, you have to think about yourself too. I can't watch you destroy yourself. I know this seems wrong, but you need to look at the future, at what comes next. It's not fair that you carry all this weight alone. I can help you. I still care about you, a lot. Ethan closed his eyes, the pressure in his chest becoming unbearable. He wanted to reject it, wanted to push her away, but the truth was, he wasn't so sure about anything anymore. The love he felt for Audrey was pure, undeniable, but the suffering he was experiencing now was something he didn't know how to handle. And Natalie's words, with her sweet tone and gentle touch, seemed to be the only thing offering any kind of comfort, even if just temporarily. I know you still care, Natalie. But Audrey is different. I don't know what would happen without her. I don't know what will happen to me if she doesn't wake up. Ethan said, his voice faltering as he pulled away from Natalie, as if the physical distance was the only way to find some peace in his mind. Natalie stood silently for a few seconds, watching him from a distance. She knew she was losing Ethan, but what hurt her the most was the fact that he was so lost, so immersed in his suffering, that he couldn't see anything beyond the tragedy in front of him. I understand, Ethan. I didn't come here to pressure you. I just wanted you to know that if you need someone, I'll be here. She said, her voice filled with pain, and she turned to leave. Ethan remained standing, his eyes fixed on the window. He felt the emptiness inside him grow, the fear of the future becoming more real with each passing moment. The death of Adrien was much heavier than he had imagined, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't imagine himself without Audrey, but he also didn't know how to deal with everything that had happened. He looked at her as Natalie left the house. For a moment, he thought maybe he could give in to the pain she brought, to the comfort she offered. But he knew his heart already belonged to Audrey, and the weight of that truth still crushed him. Night fell, but in Ethan's heart, the emptiness remained, and the doubt about what the future held still consumed him. The hours in the hospital seemed to drag on, as if time had stopped, but for Sophia, each second by her daughter's side felt like an endless ocean of pain and uncertainty. She sat there, next to Audrey's bed, her eyes fixed on her daughter's lifeless face, waiting for any sign of life, any movement that would make her believe that Audrey was still there, somewhere, lost inside the body that separated her from her. Sophia spoke softly, as if her words were a bridge to reach Audrey, even though she was unconscious, in a coma. Each sentence that left her mouth felt like a silent scream, a plea for her daughter, the girl she had raised with so much love, to find a way back. Audrey, my daughter. I know you can hear me. I know, in some way, you can still feel my presence. I promise I'll be here the whole time, while you fight to come back. I know you're strong. You've always been strong, even when things seemed impossible. And even now, I won't abandon you. I won't leave, sweetheart. Never again. She held Audrey's hand, trying to warm her daughter with the heat of her own. The feeling of helplessness overwhelmed her, but there was something in her voice, in the way she spoke to her daughter, that expressed a quiet hope. She needed to believe that Audrey was still there, that her mother's words could reach her soul. And, while she spoke, she couldn't help but look at Audrey's peaceful expression, as if waiting for her to wake up at any moment. I know you don't want me close anymore, that you pushed me away. I know I disappointed you, sweetheart. But now, all I want is to see you wake up. I want to apologize. I want you to know that, no matter what happened, you'll always be my daughter, and I love you more than anything in this world. I love you, my girl. I love you so much. Sophia's chest tightened, the tears coming from a pain she didn't know how to explain. She spoke, but the words seemed insufficient, empty, in the face of the gravity of the situation. All she could do now was stay there, by her daughter's side, waiting for a miracle. While Sophia stayed by Audrey's side, Ethan was fighting his own emotional battle. He had distanced himself from Natalie after her visit to the hospital. The pain he felt over Audrey's condition was so overwhelming that he couldn't think about anything else. But, despite his clear rejection of Natalie's advances, something inside him still bothered him. Natalie hadn't given up on Ethan. She still insisted, subtly but persistently. She knew he was going through a tough time, but she also knew that the doors to his heart were slightly ajar. The pain of seeing Ethan so vulnerable, so broken by Audrey's situation, made Natalie make a decision. She wouldn't leave, she would stay by his side, even if it was just to offer the support he needed. One afternoon, Ethan was in the hospital waiting room, trying to ease the pressure of the anguish that consumed him. He was sitting alone, his thoughts in turmoil, when Natalie approached, her smile light but tense. She didn't ask how he was, didn't try to take a direct approach. She simply sat next to him, quietly. "You still haven't answered me, Ethan," she began, her voice soft but insistent. "I know things are hard, that you're in a difficult place, but you need to talk about it. I know you're drowning in a sea of thoughts and feelings you don't know how to deal with. I can help you, Ethan." He looked at her, slightly surprised by how easily she approached him, even after so many failed attempts to win his heart. But instead of pushing her away like he had before, he remained silent, watching her. He knew that Natalie still cared about him, but something inside him kept him from giving in to this closeness. Something that wasn't about his pain, but about the fear of opening his heart again. "I don't know if I need help, Natalie." "I don't know anything anymore," he said, his voice low, reflecting the exhaustion of so many sleepless days. Natalie looked at him, her gaze filled with empathy. She knew what he was going through because, in a way, she had felt the same way before. The loss, the uncertainty, the fear of losing someone you love, it was all written in his eyes. "I know, Ethan. I know how you feel. And that's why I'm here. I'm not going to leave you, and if you need anything, I'll be by your side. Even if you don't realize it now, you're not alone." Ethan felt a lump in his throat, her words sounding like a silent promise of support. He looked at her, but his gaze was distant, lost in the pain that consumed him. He knew that, no matter how much he wanted to push Natalie away, she was still someone who cared about him, and that made him feel vulnerable, more than he would have liked. I don't know what's going to happen, Natalie. I'm so lost I don't know what to think anymore." Natalie didn't say anything more. She just gently placed her hand over his, and in that gesture, Ethan felt something he couldn't identify. She wasn't there to pressure him, she wasn't there to replace Audrey. She was there because she still cared. And that, in some way, touched the very bottom of his heart. The pain, the doubt, and the uncertainty still hovered over his mind. But, in that moment, he felt a small ray of light opening amidst the chaos. He wasn't alone, and maybe that was enough to start breathing again. The weeks passed, and Ethan began to notice that the weight of his pain, although still immense, no longer crushed him as it had before. Natalie, with her incessant care and soothing words, had become his anchor. He let himself be swept up in her gentle gestures and tender touches, which, little by little, began to fill the empty spaces inside him. The loneliness that had consumed him after the accident and his forced distance from Audrey seemed a little more bearable when Natalie was around. But still, something in Ethan remained distant. It wasn't Natalie's fault, but he knew she didn't fill the void left by the loss he felt. He allowed himself to be comforted, not as a man in love, but as someone who needed support. Meanwhile, Sophia remained at the hospital, by Audrey's side, her hope renewed after the small reactions from her daughter. Every day, she spoke to her, even without any response, as if her voice were a bridge, a thread that could bring Audrey back to reality. The pain of seeing her there, immobile, was indescribable, but Sophia didn't give up. Then, finally, something happened. A sigh. What had seemed impossible had happened. Audrey woke up. When her eyes opened, Audrey tried to move, but the pain was immediate and brutal. She felt her body heavy, immobile, and panic took over her. Sophia was there, her eyes filled with emotion, holding her hand. "Sweetheart, you're back," Sophia said, her voice trembling, trying to hold back tears. But seeing her mother, Audrey panicked. Terror consumed her, and she tried to move away, but her body wouldn't respond. She was paralyzed. The fear, the rage, and the pain of realizing the severity of her condition overwhelmed her. What happened to me?" Audrey asked, her voice hoarse, filled with fear and desperation. She looked at her immobile body, then at her mother. Am I paralyzed?" Sophia tried to calm her, but Audrey pushed her away with a desperate gesture, trying to sit up, but failing. The shock of realizing the gravity of her condition was stronger than she was. She looked at her mother with accusing eyes, the anger spilling out. "What did you do to me, Mom? How could you let this happen?" Audrey screamed, her voice filled with hatred and pain. Sophia, stunned and devastated, didn't know what to say. Audrey's words were a sharp blade, cutting through her heart. She tried to explain, but her daughter didn't want to listen. Sweetheart, I don't know why you're saying this. I've always loved you, Audrey. I always did what I thought was best for you." Sophia's voice faltered, and tears threatened to fall. I don't know what else to do." But Audrey didn't want to hear it. Rage consumed her, and she couldn't control the pain and fear she was feeling. "Don't touch me. You never understood me," Audrey said, pushing Sophia's hand away, which had been trying to touch her gently. The pain of hearing those words crushed Sophia. She wanted to speak, to fight against the accusation, but she knew nothing could change what Audrey felt at that moment. She wanted to apologize, but the words were useless in the face of her daughter's outrage. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry for everything. For not being able to give you the life I wished for you. I just want you to know that I love you, and I'll always be here for you," Sophia said, her voice breaking as she tried to control her tears. Audrey closed her eyes, not responding, letting the anguish and silence fill the room. The pain in her body and soul consumed her, and her mother, the woman she had pushed away, was there, trying to reach her, but Audrey didn't know how to deal with it all. She didn't want to see her mother now. She didn't want to face the guilt, the rage, the pain of loss. When she finally managed to calm down after the outburst of anger with her mother, Sophia, she asked, in a faint voice, for them to call Ethan. She needed to see him. When Ethan arrived, his expression was tired, marked by the pain that still consumed him, but he was happy to hear the news. He entered the room, and when he saw Audrey, his heart clenched. He knew everything had changed. She was no longer the same woman he loved. The pain from the accident, the distance, and now the paralysis had transformed her in a way he could barely comprehend. But he still loved her, in some way, and that made everything even harder. Audrey looked at him, her eyes empty, as if she were searching for something, an answer, or maybe an explanation for what had happened between them. But the truth was much more complex than she imagined. "Ethan," her voice came out hoarse, almost a whisper. "What happened to me? What are you going to do now?" Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the words he knew he had to say. He approached the bed but stood silently for a few seconds, trying to find the right words. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with pain. "Audrey, thank God you're back. You have no idea how much I've waited for this." "My love," Audrey said. "Everything's so confusing in my head. I just want to feel your love, your kiss, I want to go home." Ethan placed his hand on Audrey's face. "I've suffered so much, Audrey. Since the accident, I didn't know how to handle everything that happened. I saw you there, and I didn't know what to do. The pain was unbearable. But, at the same time, I found out you hid your real life from me. Everything got messed up in my head, and I ended up pulling away. I started getting involved with someone. And, as much as it hurt me, I didn't know how to deal with the situation. The wedding, the plans we had, they don't make sense to me anymore. It's not going to happen." Audrey felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her. She stared at him, the rage and pain mixing in her gaze. She didn't want to hear that. "Not that way. What do you want, Ethan?" she said, her voice filled with hate and pain. "You leave me in this condition, and now you're telling me you got involved with another woman? How could you do this? I loved you, and you did this to me." Ethan felt the weight of her words, but he knew he couldn't hide the truth anymore. He wasn't by her side the way she had expected, but what he felt for her was still there, even if it was different. He was lost, confused, and the guilt he felt was overwhelming. "I didn't want to hurt you, Audrey. But things have changed. I
I cancelled the wedding because I can't go through with it. I don't know what we are anymore. I know you're suffering, and I am too. I still care about you. I'll continue paying for all your treatment and everything you need, but things can't be the way they were before." Audrey closed her eyes, the pain of hearing those words overflowing. She knew, in some way, he was right, but the rage she felt now was stronger than any other emotion. The feeling of loss, of betrayal, consumed her. "Then get out of my life, Ethan. I don't want anything from you anymore. I don't want your money, I don't want your pity. I'm not a burden to you." She screamed, her voice faltering at the end, but the rage was still there. Ethan felt the blow of her words. He knew he was hurting Audrey, but what could he do now? He had no more answers to give. He couldn't promise what he didn't know if he could fulfill. I'll continue paying for the treatments. I know you don't want it, but it's the least I can do. I just want you to be okay," he said, his voice hoarse, as if trying to soften the pain he himself caused. But Audrey looked at him with contempt, as if everything he was saying was empty. Ethan, not knowing what else to say, lowered his head and stepped away from the bed. He knew there was nothing more he could do to fix the situation. The words she had said were like a scream of hopelessness, and he felt powerless in the face of it. He loved Audrey, but at the same time, he knew he couldn't live with her expectations, with the pressure of a future that no longer existed. Audrey looked at him as he left, her heart heavy but also full of rage and pain. She didn't want to be seen as a victim, didn't want to depend on anyone. But deep down, she knew her life had changed forever. What she had before, the love she thought was eternal, now seemed like a distant dream. And, as Ethan walked away, she felt the weight of the transformation her life had gone through, something she could no longer control. When he left, she was left alone. The silence filled the room, and the pain she felt was deeper than any words could express. She felt she had lost not only the man she loved, but also the woman she thought she was. The future she had dreamed of had shattered into 1,000 pieces, and now, all that remained was loneliness and emptiness. Audrey was alone in the hospital room, her eyes fixed on the sterile white ceiling, her breath still heavy, as if trying to calm the storm within. She attempted to move her arms, still hoping that any small movement might happen. She tried to stretch her legs, to feel the ground beneath her feet, but nothing happened. The weight of her incapacity crushed her. Her muscles wouldn't respond, and what was once a simple, automatic action now felt like an impossible struggle. What could she do now? How could she move forward with her body completely out of control? The reality of her new life hit her like a hurricane, and she didn't know how to cope with it. Tears started to stream down her face without warning, and she let them fall, not even trying to hold them back. Bitter thoughts consumed her mind. I could have done everything differently, she thought. If I had made better choices, maybe none of this would have happened. If I had been more careful, more responsible. But it didn't matter anymore. What she had done had brought her here, and all that remained were the ruins of her past life. The pain of loss was overwhelming, but the emptiness of not knowing how to move forward seemed even crueler. How could she find the strength to continue when her own body refused to work for her? Audrey looked at her immobilized arms, at the body she could barely recognize. The fear of not being able to build a new life consumed her, and the feeling of being a stranger in her own skin was terrifying. She felt the weight of sadness, guilt, and an impotence that left her paralyzed in her own mind. How am I going to get through this, she thought. Will I ever be happy again? Or is this going to be my life forever? She knew recovery would be a long process, but the doubts about her future and the uncertainty of what life still had to offer prevented her from seeing any light at the end of the tunnel. The days dragged on endlessly, with the hospital providing a safe but impersonal space. Audrey was surrounded by doctors, nurses, and machines, but she felt emptier than ever. She didn't know how to cope with what was left of her life. Amid the chaos of her emotions, a nurse entered the room with a soft smile, trying to bring some light to Audrey's dark day. "How are you feeling today?" The nurse asked with a gentleness that felt like a relief to Audrey, even though the pain was still ever present. Audrey looked at her, trying to gather the strength to respond, but her words came out faltering, heavy with pain. Silence settled for a moment, until the nurse, with her soft voice, broke the stillness. "You know, Audrey, your mom has been here the whole time. Every day, without fail. She stayed by your side, waiting for you to wake up. I know, it's not always easy for the two of you, but somehow, she's been relentless in this hospital. She hasn't left your side. I think you should know that." These words were like a sharp blade to Audrey. She had always known her mother's love, but the anger and pride that had taken over her so cruelly had never let her consider how much Sophia had truly been there. Audrey felt the guilt overwhelm her chest. What had she done to the woman who had always been by her side? She had ignored her, hurt her, and now the reality hit hard. She could no longer afford to deny the love her mother had given her, but what would she do now? Audrey looked at the nurse, her eyes filled with tears, feeling more vulnerable than she had ever imagined. The anger she felt toward herself spilled over in a silent cry, and she felt the weight of guilt take over her, each tear falling like a burden she didn't know how to carry. The nurse, noticing Audrey's emotional state, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I know you're going through a lot, but sometimes, looking back at those who've always been by our side can help us find the way back. Your mom loves you deeply, Audrey. Maybe it's time to listen to your heart." The nurse's words, simple yet full of truth, resonated in Audrey's ears. She needed to face herself, realize what truly mattered, and, more importantly, realize that her mother's love had always been there, waiting, even though she hadn't known how to accept it. Audrey, with tears in her eyes, made a request that had been suppressed inside her. "I want to see my mom," her voice faltered. "I need to see her." The nurse smiled in understanding and quickly went to call Sophia. When the door opened and Sophia entered, Audrey couldn't hold back anymore. She hadn't expected her mother to be there, and seeing her, the pain of everything she had done overwhelmed her like a wave. She felt the fragility of her own soul, and without another word, she simply cried. The crying was intense, like a release, a valve of escape for all the emotional weight she had carried. Sophia rushed to her daughter, her eyes swollen from crying, but with the softness she always had, ready to embrace her daughter with a love that had never left. "Sweetheart, my love," Sophia said, her voice breaking with emotion. She held Audrey with so much care, as if there was no longer any way for the pain to separate them. "I've been here all this time, and I'll always be here. No matter what happened. I love you so much." Audrey sobbed in her embrace, and for a moment, the world around her disappeared. She didn't need words, just that contact, that feeling of being loved unconditionally. All she felt was the pain of the distance that had been created, but now, somehow, she knew she could rebuild something with her mother, even if the path was difficult. "Mom," Audrey said, her voice choking. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix things between us. I hurt you so much. I can't undo it, but I want to try." Sophia, her eyes filled with tears, simply stroked Audrey's hair, as if trying to soothe the pain her daughter still felt. She didn't need to say anything. Words were useless now. What mattered was the gesture, the affection, and the strength of the bond that, although weakened, was still there, ready to be renewed. "I know, sweetheart. I know," Sophia replied tenderly. "We can't change the past, but we can start now. And I'm here for you. I'll always be here." Audrey, with her heart still broken but feeling a little relief, asked, through sobs. "Mom, I want to go home. I want to go back to our house. I can't stay here. I don't know if this hospital is where I need to be. What I need isn't here. What I need is at home. With you." Sophia, touched by Audrey's words, knew this was the first big step for her daughter to begin rebuilding her life. She knew she couldn't offer all the structure the hospital had, but deep down, she understood that Audrey's healing wasn't in machines or expensive treatments. It was in love, in the daily care, in the strength of their relationship. And that, she could give abundantly. "Of course, sweetheart, of course we can. I'll take you home, and I'll take care of you like I always have. You won't have the same structure here, but we'll get through this together, no matter what happens. You and me, just like it's always been." one step at a time," Sophia said, with a gentle smile, full of determination. And with those words, Audrey felt a lightness, a sense that maybe it was still possible to find her way back. She didn't know what the future would hold, but in that moment, by her mother's side, she knew she wasn't alone anymore. The days in Sophia and Audrey's small home passed slowly, but with a warmth that the hospital could never provide. Each morning was a new opportunity for Audrey to rebuild herself, even though her body didn't respond like it used to. The fear still consumed her when she tried to perform even the simplest tasks, but with her mother's support, something inside her started to change. The pain, though intense, began to make way for a quiet strength that pushed her to keep going. Sophia was there every day, tending to every need Audrey had, but also trying to be the foundation for her daughter. She knew that, despite all the physical limitations Audrey now faced, the real challenge would be helping her daughter regain her mental strength. It was easy to get lost in the pain, in the trauma, in the resentment. But Sophia knew the road ahead would be longer than she had imagined. And as much as she was doing everything she could, she felt the weight of being the only one responsible for restoring her daughter's life. Looking at Audrey, it was impossible not to see the reflections of her struggle. There were moments when she seemed distant, her eyes clouded with longing, and no matter how much she tried to hide it, the pain of knowing she would never be the same woman again consumed her. But Sophia didn't let that discourage her. She knew that simply offering love and physical care wasn't enough. Audrey needed to feel there was something more. She needed to get back her will, her internal fight, the strength she always had, but now aimed at a new kind of life. That's when Sophia decided to do what seemed impossible. With the savings she had, she sought out a specialized physical therapist, someone who could help her daughter take the first steps in regaining a bit of her independence. It wouldn't be easy, but it was the least Sophia could do to try and rebuild what had been lost. Ryan was the name of the physical therapist who came, with a calm demeanor and an energy that seemed to be exactly what Audrey needed. He had a way of speaking that was gentle but firm, and little by little, he helped Audrey realize that, even though her body wasn't the same, her mind still had the power to transform everything. When he entered the house for the first time, Audrey watched him from a distance, her gaze suspicious but also tinged with curiosity. She knew she couldn't live forever in the shadow of what she had lost, but the fear of not overcoming her limitations was still great. She feared that nothing could ever be the same again. Ryan smiled at her as he greeted her, with a calm yet welcoming smile. "Hi, Audrey. I know the process won't be easy, but I'm here to help you take the first step toward a new life. We'll take it slow, one step at a time. I believe you can do it, with patience." Audrey didn't know what to think. She looked at him, her eyes still swollen and filled with pain, and spoke with a choked voice. "I don't know if I can. Everything feels so far away. I don't know where to start." Ryan approached, but not in an invasive way. He stood beside her, as if waiting for a sign from her to begin. He knew that the biggest obstacle wasn't Audrey's body, but her mind, which was in constant conflict with the limitations imposed by paralysis. He needed to earn her trust, show her that he could help her handle it. "I know it seems really difficult right now, Audrey. But every small progress, no matter how small, is a victory. Trust me, you don't have to do everything at once. Let's focus on the present, and step by step, you'll see things start to change. Let's start with something simple. What do you think?" She looked at him, and something in his words touched her. Even though the pain was immense, she knew she couldn't keep holding on to the past. If she wanted any chance at a different future, she would have to try. Even if it was just a little bit. She nodded. "Okay. Let's try." Ryan smiled again, with a quiet confidence that seemed to transmit some kind of strength to her. He knew that the beginning would be difficult, but he was there to make sure Audrey knew she wasn't alone. He started with simple exercises using an adapted wheelchair he had brought. At first, Audrey hesitated, but little by little, with Ryan's patience, she started to allow herself to try. "Now, Audrey, just try to relax your shoulders and make small movements. No rush, okay? Take a deep breath and follow your body's rhythm. Let's take it slow." With each movement she made, even if it was small, a sense of relief filled her. It wasn't much, but it was enough for her to feel that there was still a chance to regain a little of her freedom. It was a start, and maybe that was all she needed. The physical therapy sessions became a regular part of Audrey's routine. Over time, she began to realize she could do things that once seemed impossible. Sophia's watchful eyes, which followed her with dedication, were the silent yet essential support that kept her moving forward. However, not everything was easy. There were days when anger and sadness took over Audrey again, and she felt helpless. She would cry alone in her room, with the weight of the situation still crushing her, but whenever this happened, Sophia was there, ready to hold her, to listen, to remind her that, even with all the limitations, she still had a chance to rebuild her life. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult session of physical therapy, Audrey sat on the living room couch, staring out the window. The day was cloudy, and the feeling of being trapped in a body that didn't respond to her made her feel like a stranger in her own skin. Sophia entered the room and cautiously approached, sitting next to her. "Sweetheart, I know it's hard, and I know the pain you feel goes far beyond what I can see. But I also know you have strength, you've always had it. We can't control everything, but we can choose to move forward, one step at a time. No matter how small that step is. What matters is that we're together." Audrey looked at her mother, the pain still so present, but at the same time, something inside her began to soften. She wasn't alone anymore. She had someone by her side, someone who wouldn't abandon her, no matter how hard the road was. "I know, Mom. I just don't know how to deal with all of this yet. But I'll try. I promise I'll try." Sophia smiled, a tender smile full of hope. "And I'll be here, sweetheart. For anything you need. We'll get through this together." At that moment, Audrey felt that, despite all the difficulties, there was something holding her up, her mother's love, which would never abandon her. And with that, she took a step forward, even if it was a small one, but one that brought her closer to a future that still had a chance to be rewritten. The days continued to pass slowly, but for Audrey, each morning brought a small victory. The physical therapy exercises were difficult, sometimes painful, but she allowed herself to keep going, knowing that each movement, each effort, brought her closer to something more. Life, which once seemed out of reach, began to show signs that it could be rebuilt. But none of this would be possible without the relentless support of Sophia and, of course, Ryan, the physical therapist who, even when the money ran out, continued working with her without charge. Audrey knew it was a luxury to have someone like Ryan by her side. He wasn't there for money or interest, but because he believed in her, because he saw in her a strength that even she was starting to rediscover. One day, after another long session of physical therapy, Audrey, exhausted, looked at him with a sincere smile, something rare but genuine. "Ryan, I don't know how to thank you, you've been essential to this process. I would have given up if it weren't for you," she said, her voice choking with emotion. Ryan smiled softly, with the calm that had always been characteristic of him. "You don't need to thank me, Audrey. I do this because I believe in you. It's not what I gain from it that matters, but what you'll achieve with your strength. The rest is just a consequence. You're doing the hard work, I'm just here to help guide you." Audrey felt that his words were more than just motivational. They represented a genuine commitment, and somehow, that made her want to keep going more and more. But, even with all the help she was receiving, she knew her life was being transformed irreversibly. Paralysis limited her physically, but that didn't mean she was powerless in other areas of her life. There was something more she could do, something beyond treatment, beyond exercises. That's when the idea of creating an online channel came to her. Audrey had a story to tell, a story of pain, overcoming, and a new beginning. She knew that if she could inspire others going through similar struggles, maybe her pain would have some purpose. Maybe sharing her journey could not only help her, but many others too. In her first video, Audrey spoke directly to the camera, with a serious expression, but at the same time full of gratitude. "Hello, everyone. My name is Audrey, and I'm a survivor. I'm not here to talk about superpowers or miracles.
I'm here to talk about the daily struggle, the obstacles many of us face, and the importance of recognizing that life, even with limitations, can continue. I am a quadriplegic, and this has changed everything for me. But it also gave me a new perspective, and I want to share that with you. She paused, her eyes shining with sincerity. I want to apologize to my mom, Sophia. Mom, you've been by my side, you've loved me and given me strength when I didn't know if I could continue. I've made many mistakes, and I've hurt you. But today, I understand how important you are in my life. And that's what I want to share with the world. Life isn't about perfection, it's about finding strength in what seems impossible. And no matter how hard it is, we must keep going. For anyone watching, it doesn't matter what you've lost. What matters is what you still have and what you can do with it. Audrey posted the video without much expectation, but, to her surprise, it quickly went viral. The video was shared thousands of times, and soon messages started pouring in. People from all over the country, and even from other countries, began commenting, thanking her, and sharing their own stories of struggle. Audrey never imagined that her pain could generate such an immense wave of support. She was being heard, and that gave her strength. Over time, Audrey became more dedicated to the channel. With each video, she talked about her life, the difficulties of people with disabilities, and how, despite everything, it was possible to find ways to live with dignity and purpose. She began to do daily videos, covering various topics, from tips for social inclusion to daily challenges she faced, such as adjusting to using a wheelchair and the resources that could help people like her with physical limitations. She also began receiving invitations to appear on TV shows, interviews, and podcasts, where she shared her journey with the audience. As her online presence grew, so did the opportunities. Advertisements began to pop up, and without realizing it, she was turning her experience into a source of income. Brands started to take interest in the impact her channel was having, and Audrey's life, which had once been confined to a hospital room and the comfort of her humble home, was now taking a new direction. With the income from her channel, she was able to pay for more treatments, accessibility equipment, and even indulge in small luxuries that had once seemed out of reach, like a trip to a place she'd always dreamed of visiting. But more importantly, Audrey finally found the peace she had been looking for. She was no longer seen just for her condition as a quadriplegic, but for the strength with which she faced her reality. She felt useful, knowing she was contributing to something bigger than her own pain. One peaceful morning, after recording another video, Audrey sat with her mother in the living room. Sophia entered with a cup of tea, her serene smile still reflecting the immense love she felt for her daughter. Audrey looked at her with gratitude. "Mom, look at what I've accomplished," Audrey said, her voice full of emotion, as she looked at the computer, where the support messages and view numbers were continuously growing. "I never imagined this could happen. I thought my life was over, but now I see that all of this has a purpose. And I have you by my side to support me." Sophia smiled, her eyes moist, and embraced Audrey with all the love in the world. The scene of a mother caring for her daughter, and together overcoming difficulties, was the real strength they needed. "Sweetheart, you're stronger than you ever imagined. I've always known that. And now, the world is seeing the real Audrey. And I couldn't be prouder of you." Audrey smiled, feeling that, finally, she was starting to find her way. She no longer needed others' approval. What she had built came from within her, a silent but immensely powerful strength. Her life, despite all the challenges, finally had a purpose. And so, Audrey moved forward, knowing that, as long as she was alive, she could always fight and, above all, inspire. Audrey was sitting in her room, eyes locked on her computer screen, replying to her followers' comments when something made her heart stop. The notification that popped up wasn't from a fan or a new follower. It was news no one in her digital world had seen coming. Ethan was getting married. To Natalie. She stared at the image, Ethan in a sharp tux, Natalie with that unmistakable sparkle in her eyes. The caption read, "The couple has made it official, in true style." Audrey's chest tightened. What had she expected? That he'd wait for her? That he'd take back everything he ever said and did? But as she read the headline again, something unexpected happened. There was no pain. No crushing weight she thought she'd feel seeing Ethan and Natalie together. She couldn't explain it, but on some deeper level, she realized she had already let go. The cycle that once held her captive was finally broken. And though a part of her still mourned what could have been, Audrey finally saw the truth. Her life no longer revolved around Ethan. Reality had set in. Ethan had moved on, and so had she. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: the only person who could choose to move forward now was her. Without Ethan. Without the ache he left behind. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Sophia stepped in, concern all over her face. "Hey, honey. You've been awfully quiet," she said, studying Audrey, clearly deeper in thought than usual. Without turning around, Audrey replied with a calmness that surprised even herself. "I just saw something, Mom. Ethan's marrying Natalie. But I don't know. I don't feel anything. It doesn't hurt anymore." Sophia paused, stunned, but quietly relieved. She knew Audrey was still riding an emotional roller coaster, but hearing that was a step, an important one. "Are you okay?" Sophia asked gently, sitting beside her daughter. Audrey gave a faint smile. Her mind was a swirl of thoughts, but somewhere deep down, she knew life was moving forward. In ways she hadn't expected. The grief of losing Ethan was slowly being replaced by something new. A quiet acceptance. Time had passed, and maybe it was time to let go. Then there was Ryan. Calm, steady Ryan, who'd become one of the most unexpected constants in Audrey and Sophia's lives ever since Audrey came out of her coma. Still working as a physical therapist, Ryan had slowly become more than just a professional presence. His kindness extended beyond therapy sessions. He genuinely cared. And more than that, he wanted Audrey to rediscover life beyond her bedroom and hospital walls. One day, after a therapy session, Ryan showed up at Sophia's door with an idea. "What do you say we get out of here?" he said with a half smile. "Nothing fancy. Maybe a movie, a cup of coffee. I just figured you both could use a little break." Sophia, ever the cautious one, looked at Audrey, then back at Ryan. "I think that's a great idea. But tonight, I'm staying in," she said, glancing back at Audrey with a hint of worry. "You okay going with Ryan by yourself?" Audrey, now more at ease with Ryan, didn't even hesitate. "I'm fine, Mom. I'll go. It'll be good for me. I want to try." And just like that, for the first time, Audrey stepped outside with Ryan. Just the two of them. They went to the movies, and even though Audrey felt a bit unsure being out, she was also excited. Something inside her was shifting. Ryan was gentle, always respectful, and being near him brought a strange but comforting feeling. As the movie played and the theater darkened, the story pulled them in. At some point, Ryan's fingers brushed against hers, and in that small, quiet moment, something stirred. A soft, electric pulse. Time seemed to stop. What she felt wasn't exactly love, not yet. But it was real. And it was something she hadn't felt since the accident. When the movie ended and the lights came back on, Ryan turned to her with a different look in his eyes. Deep or sincere. He smiled, and before she could even process it, he leaned in and kissed her, gently, but with meaning. It was brief, but it said everything. Audrey froze, her heart pounding. As Ryan pulled back, he looked straight into her eyes, his voice low and full of emotion. "Audrey, I need you to know I've fallen for you. I know you've been through so much, and I can't expect you to give me anything you're not ready to give. But I had to say it. I love you." The words hit her like a wave. She looked at him, her face tightening, her mind tangled in doubt. She did care about him, but what did that even mean now? She didn't know how to open her heart again. How could she give herself to someone when she wasn't even sure who she was anymore? "Ryan. Her voice cracked, eyes filled with uncertainty. "I care about you. I do. But I can't do this to you. I'm still so broken.
I don't know what you see in me, but I can't give you what you deserve. I can't be the woman you need." Silence hung between them.
Ryan, heart sinking, looked at her, knowing she was right.
He couldn't push. He wouldn't.
But the feelings he had were real, and he didn't know what to do with the weight of rejection that wasn't really rejection, it was grief.
And fear.
"I get it, Audrey," he said softly, voice shaking.
"I won't pressure you. I needed you to know how I feel. If you ever change your mind, I'll be here. Always." Audrey, eyes glossy with tears, nodded. They sat there, both silently grieving what almost was. Because sometimes, even with love and respect, the timing just isn't right. And Audrey knew this wasn't about Ryan. This was about her. Her journey. Her healing. The road ahead was uncertain.
But for the first time, Audrey felt it might be possible to take a step forward.
Even if it hurt.
She still had a long way to go, still so much to rediscover about herself, about life, and maybe, someday, about love. The day was overcast, but the house of Sophia and Audrey seemed to radiate a soft, welcoming light, as if the outside weather had no power over the peace that was beginning to settle within. Ryan had become part of this new chapter, but there was still something unexplored between him and Audrey, something he didn't know how to approach. Sitting in the living room with Sophia, he stared at the floor, nervous, with tension hanging in the air. "Mrs. Sophia, I need to talk to you about something important," Ryan said, taking a deep breath, unsure of how to begin.
Concern was written all over his face.
Sophia looked at him with a gentle smile, but also with an expression of attentiveness. She knew that, despite Ryan becoming a constant presence in Audrey's life, there was still something unresolved between them, something she had sensed herself.
"What's going on, Ryan? You know you can talk to me. Audrey needs stability, and so do I. But more than that, I need to know from you, what do you feel for my daughter?"
Ryan hesitated, but the strength of Sophia's gaze made him open up.
He knew he had to be honest. I love Audrey, Mrs. Sophia.
And I know I can't force this, I know she's still going through a process of recovery, of acceptance. But even so, I can't lie to myself. What I feel for her is real, and I don't want this to be just a phase. I'm not here out of pity, or out of compassion. I'm here because I believe in what Audrey can be, and because I believe we can build something together, if she wants to. Sophia looked at him with a thoughtful expression, searching for some sincerity in his words that might serve as the foundation for what she feared. She knew Audrey's life was slowly transforming, and she didn't want a new relationship to add more pressure, more challenges. "I understand what you're saying, Ryan," she started, her voice soft but firm.
"But I need you to assure me of one thing, do you truly love my daughter? It's not just a passing infatuation, not just an impulse, is it? Do you understand the weight of responsibility this carries? I can't see Audrey getting hurt again." Ryan, with sincere eyes, took a step forward, approaching Sophia as if his words needed to be even clearer. "I love Audrey with all my heart. I know what this means, Mrs. Sophia. And I know that this love can't be rushed, but I can't hide from it. I admire her so much for the strength she has, and I don't see her as a victim, but as an incredible person. I just want her to see that in herself too." Sophia sighed, thinking about Ryan's words. She knew he was a good man, and his desire to protect Audrey made her want to believe in him. But her daughter was still so fragile, and the fear of more disappointment consumed her. "I'll help you, Ryan. As long as you truly assure me that this feeling isn't just a whim, that you'll be the support Audrey needs, not just for her, but for you as well. I don't want her to suffer anymore. If you truly believe in what you're saying, then I'll support you both. But if, at any point, I realize this isn't what you really want, I won't hesitate to protect her." Ryan felt a weight lifted off his shoulders, but he also knew the responsibility of his words was immense. He nodded, determined. "You can trust me, Mrs. Sophia. I won't give up on her. I'll be here for her, through whatever comes." Meanwhile, Audrey was in her room, sitting on the bed,
feeling overwhelmed by an unease she didn't know how to control. Her life, once full of certainties, now seemed torn between the pain of the past and the possibility of a new future. Ryan, who had always been so kind and patient with her, now seemed closer, and that confused her. She knew she loved him in some way, but what could she offer him? How could she let him into a heart that was still broken, into a life so complicated? She didn't want to hurt him in any way. That's when Sophia entered her room, her gaze gently concerned but also filled with affection. "Sweetheart, we need to talk," Sophia said, closing the door behind her and sitting down next to Audrey. Audrey looked at her, unsure of what to expect. She didn't want to lie to her mother anymore, but she also didn't want to admit that, in her heart, the fear of opening up to love was taking over. "What is it, Mom?" Audrey asked softly, almost as if trying to protect herself from what she knew was coming. Sophia looked at her for a moment, her eyes full of understanding. She knew how much her daughter was still struggling within herself, and she knew the only thing she could do was offer her support, without hurry, without pressure. "I know you're going through a tough time, sweetheart. I see your struggle, and I know none of this is easy for you. But I need you to know something very important. You're going through something that many people out there are watching. Your channel, your words have touched so many people. You're an example, Audrey. You've gone through immense pain, and still, you shared your truth with the world. Many people have started to look up to you because you've shown them that it's possible to overcome any adversity, no matter how hard it is." Audrey looked at her mother, a little surprised by the depth of what she was hearing. She had never stopped to think about the impact her story might have on others. "But I don't know, Mom. How can I be an example if I still feel so lost? How can I help anyone if I'm still trying to find myself?" Sophia gently caressed Audrey's hand, with tenderness. "Sweetheart, true strength comes from recognizing who you are, even in your weaknesses. What you've done with your pain is admirable, and you need to give yourself a chance to believe in your own power. I know love, support, all of that will come, but first, you need to accept what's going on inside you. You're not alone, Audrey. You never were." Audrey felt a tear slip down her face, but this time, it wasn't just sadness. It was a mix of pain and relief, as if, for the first time, she felt truly seen. She was no longer being judged by her condition or her fragility. She was being seen by the woman who had always believed in her, who loved her unconditionally. "Mom, I don't know if I'm ready for all of this." "For love, for Ryan, for a new life," Audrey said, her voice trembling. Sophia smiled, gently touching her daughter's face. "You're more ready than you realize, sweetheart. Sometimes, what we need most is the courage to let ourselves be loved, to surrender to all that life has to offer. And you have that courage, I see it in you every day." Audrey felt enveloped by a sense of comfort that calmed her deeply. She knew she couldn't control everything, but maybe, finally, she was ready to let life happen. Ryan was there, in her life, ready to support her, and she knew that, if she was able to open up, she could build something with him. But, more importantly, she knew that she was rebuilding herself, one day at a time. The conversation between mother and daughter ended with a long, tight hug. Audrey felt the weight of her mother's love like never before, and in that moment, she understood that, no matter how difficult the road ahead, she wasn't alone. She had Sophia's love, and with that, the chance to start anew. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold, an explosion of colors that seemed tailor-made for the moment. The sun was setting on the horizon, casting its final light over the quiet park. It was a place where the noise of the city seemed distant, and the soft breeze gently caressed the faces of those there. Ryan was pushing Audrey in her wheelchair, with a bond that was slowly taking shape. The walk was slow, but the moment, undeniably, was significant. Ryan, always attentive and patient, looked at Audrey with a calm smile, trying to read her thoughts without pressuring her. She had started to open up to him, but there was still something inside her that prevented her from fully surrendering to what they could be together. "Audrey, I know we're building something beautiful, something unique. But I also know you have your fears, your insecurities. I just want you to know there's no rush. I'm here, by your side, with no hurry, no pressure.
I want us to build this in the way that feels right for you. I don't want to force anything, never."
She looked at him, her eyes marked with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. She loved him, that was undeniable. But the fear still accompanied her, and the feeling that she couldn't give him everything he deserved consumed her. Audrey had fought so many battles within herself, and the weight of past choices was still heavy. She didn't want to be an incomplete woman, someone who loved him but felt that her limitations prevented her from offering him a future worthy of him. Looking at him, she felt her heart race. Ryan was there, with all the patience in the world, willing to wait, willing to endure.
But Audrey knew it wasn't fair to him.
He deserved more than she could give. Finally, she asked him to stop. They were in the middle of the park, with a view of a calm lake reflecting the colors of the sunset. The trees around them gently swayed, and the sound of the leaves in the wind brought a unique tranquility. But inside her, the whirlwind of emotion still prevented her from fully surrendering. Ryan watched her, his eyes curious, but patient, respecting her time.
"What's going on, Audrey?"
he asked, his voice soft, trying to guess what was going on inside her. She took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to say something she knew wouldn't be easy. The silence between them was heavy with emotion, and Audrey's words came with an immense weight.
"Ryan," she began, her voice breaking. "I need to apologize. Apologize for everything I've put you through. All this time, I've pulled away, I've protected myself because I didn't know how to give you what you deserve. I love you, Ryan. I love you more than I can express. But I can't ask you to stay with me knowing you're giving up an entire life, a complete life for someone like me. I can't deny you that."
Ryan looked at her, his eyes fixed on her, trying to process the words that had just come out of Audrey's mouth. The pain was clear on his face, but at the same time, there was something else, determination.
He wasn't there out of pity or sympathy. He was there because he truly loved Audrey, because he saw in her a strength that Audrey herself still couldn't see. "Audrey,"
Ryan said, his voice a little shaky but full of sincerity.
"I know what you're thinking. And I know what you're trying to do. But are you doing this for us, or for yourself? I'm not going to abandon you.
I'm not going anywhere, not now, not ever. I'm willing to live this life with you, however it comes, because what I feel for you is real.
It's not about what you can or can't offer me. If you can give me your love, that's all I need. I want to be with you."
Audrey felt the weight of his words, and for the first time, she realized she didn't have to do it all alone.
She didn't have to be perfect for him. She just had to be herself.
And, as much as the pain of her own fears still loomed large, she knew that their love wouldn't be complete as long as she kept denying herself. She looked at him, feeling tears welling up, but this time, it wasn't sadness. It was the feeling that maybe, finally, she could experience something different, something worth it.
"I love you, Ryan.
I love you so much," she said, her voice trembling, but full of emotion. Ryan hugged her, and in that embrace, something changed. It wasn't just the comfort he offered her, but the trust he placed in their relationship. They were together, with their fears, their limitations, but also with a love stronger than anything else.
And that was what mattered.
The kiss that followed was gentle but full of promises. It wasn't an impulsive kiss but a gesture of surrender, of acceptance, of a love that finally had space to bloom. And there, in the silence of the park, with the sun slowly setting on the horizon, Ryan and Audrey felt that this was the first step toward the future they were beginning to build together. In the following days, Audrey shared her experiences on her channel. She talked about what had prevented her from surrendering to love, about her insecurities, but also about the importance of recognizing that we all have the right to be loved, to be whole, regardless of the limitations life imposes on us.
Hey, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about something very important. About love. I spent a long time thinking that I didn't deserve to be loved because of everything that happened to me. But the truth is, love isn't about being perfect, it's about being real. And that's why I'm here today, to tell all of you that, despite everything, it's possible to love and be loved. She smiled, the words flowing easily now. And I'm grateful for each and every one of you who supports me.
Love is a journey, and as hard as the struggles are, it's possible to find happiness in every step, even the hardest ones. The video went viral, and Audrey not only began gaining more followers, but also received invitations to TV shows and podcasts where she shared her journey of inclusion and overcoming. But more important than all of that, she felt her life was finally taking shape, in a way she had never imagined. When Audrey and Ryan's wedding happened, it became one of the most anticipated events in the country. They married in a simple ceremony, but one full of meaning, surrounded by the people who had supported them the most. Sophia walked her daughter down the aisle, in a moment that crowned the overcoming of all the turbulence that had passed between mother and daughter. Audrey's story, which had started with pain and overcoming, was now a symbol of resilience and true love. The two of them were finally living a life together, a life full of challenges, but also of joy, companionship, and shared dreams. And looking toward the future, Audrey knew that, even in the hardest moments, she had found something she never imagined, the ability to love herself and allow others to love her. And with that, she found true happiness.